As we begin Daphne and Apollo, we have a little bit of explanation about who we're talking about, and then we get into Apollo speaking. So we'll start with Amor as your subject. Primus is describing it. Phoebe is another word for Apollo, and it's going to be genitive. And then we're going to supply either fuit, or if you prefer erat, you're going to throw that right in there. So the first love of Apollo was Daphne. This word is describing Daphne, and this is called a patronym. And that is a name based on someone's father. So Daphne of Peneus was her father. Then the rest of our sentence is a relative clause. The antecedent of quem is going to go back to amor. So the love which, and then our subject here is fors, and this ignara is describing it, and then dated, known dated. So which, fors, known dated, but which the era, the Saiwa era of Cupid gave. All right, and then Delius is going to be another name for Apollo. So Apollo, this gets a little bit tricky here. I'm going to go Apollo, and then I'm going to go to this little clause here. So this word is describing Apollo. Apollo is proud, and then we have an ablative absolute here. And so because we have a perfect active participle with weakta, we'll say after the snake had been conquered, or because of this word, you could say proud because the snake has been conquered, something like that. And then, but just kind of telling us his state of mind right now. Then we jump to our verb widerat. He had seen hunk. And hunk means this one, and it's going to refer back to Cupid. So this one, new pair recently. And then this is where things get a little bit tricky. So this participle is going to describe hunk. It's a present active participle because it has that NT. And so it means bending. And then this is the direct object. And then we've got a ducto nervo as another ablative absolute. So this is telling us what Cupid's doing. So Cupid is basically pulling back his arrow, so he's about to shoot it. And that's when Apollo starts talking. So Apollo, we've got and then the dixerat is down here. And he had said, what? Supply an est with that, just like we did up here. And when we have to supply something, that's going to be called an ellipsis. So an ellipsis is where the author's left a word out. Usually it's the form of the verb to be. So what is there for you? This is dative. Lascive puer, it's going to be vocative. And a little prepositional phrase. And then we've got this ista, which is the same as illa, but has a negative connotation. Instead of just those weapons, equipment, that equipment, it'll mean those. Yuck. So he's kind of rude to Cupid. And so that's going to be our subject. Decent is our verb, and then nostros humeros is our direct object. Nostros, remember, is equivalent to meos, so he's going to use the plural, first person plural instead of singular, kind of makes him larger than life. All right, and then in 458 to 459, we have an anaphora of the qui. And likewise, in 458, we have an anaphora with the dare. So we're going to get the antecedent from qui from our verb posthumus. So like we or I, it's referring back to Apollo. I who am able to give. And then kerto vulnera, this is something that Ovid does also in Pyramus and Thisbe, where he separates those words, but and kind of uses them twice. And then we've got ferai is is an indirect object, so to, dative, and then hosti also is an indirect object. So I'm repeating that word, dare. So hosti and ferai are dative, while dare are infinitives. Then in this line, same deal. So the antecedent is still I or we or Apollo. Your verb is all the way down here, so creating an enjambment. So I who slayed, and this part's a little bit tricky, so bear with me here. I slayed the python. I slayed the swollen python, so it's really large. And then enumeri sagatis are going to be an ablative of means. So with innumerable arrows, I slayed the swollen python. And then this word prementem describes the python pressing tot eugera, pressing over so many acres. So he's like, it's really huge. And then with its, this is describing the python with its deadly belly. So this is very hyperbolic. He's very over the top here. All right. And then this last part, he takes a little dig at Cupid, and he says, you and then kind of talking to him. This is that future imperative. We've seen this before. So it just means be in the future. So be content. And then he's got two infinitives that go with that, complement it. So be content to, and then be content to right here. And then nescio, quos, and amores. Ooh, all of that going together is going to serve as our direct object. So it literally is like, I don't know what love affairs, or something like, I don't know what kind of loves. So you provoke, or be content to provoke, I don't know what loves, with your torch. And so that torch being maybe something associated with like marriage, passion, that sort of thing. And then he says, and be content not to osere laudes nostra. So again, using that nostra, that plural, even though it's probably singular. So talking about his glory. So he's just kind of taking a dig at Cupid.